If all of humanity somehow disappeared tomorrow, what would happen to everything we left behind? We won't know that for sure unless one of us travels into the future before it actually happens. But we can pretty much imagine what would happen to Earth if humanity ceased to exist overnight. 1 year from now, nature would start to take over what was once lively and bustling city streets. 10 years from now, structural damages are visible. Cars turning to rust, buildings crumbling, and streets decaying. 100 years from now, nature would have fully reclaimed most cities, with wild animals struggling for dominance in a world where humans were long gone. 10,000 years later, if some remnant of these cities still existed, there would be nothing but unrecognizable ruins, with important national landmarks probably looking like the Statue of Liberty and Planet of the Apes. Fast forward 100,000 years later, and human structures were either buried under layers of sediment or eroded. Finally, 1 million or so years later, none of these structures would remain. Even the slightest evidence of humans once inhabiting and dominating the Earth would be hard to find. Every city we built, every technology we developed, and every discovery we have made in the past several thousand years would turn to dust. However, would that be really the case? One intriguing hypothesis makes us wonder that very question. If humans cease to exist, and in 1 million years another life form would evolve into an advanced species, would they find traces of our civilization? But what if instead we were that advanced species in the future? Now, if there was an advanced civilization that existed before our own, would we know it? The Silurian Hypothesis was a thought experiment that asks whether is it possible for our modern science to detect whether there was an advanced civilization in the past. While the question of whether the civilization we humans built would leave traces in the far future would inevitably be asked when thinking about this hypothesis, the original question was actually in reverse. The Silurian Hypothesis. Presented by University of Rochester, astrophysicist Adam Frank and Goddard Institute for Space Studies. Director Gavin Schmidt in 2018, the Silurian Hypothesis was indeed a thought experiment that asks, how do we know if we're the only advanced civilization on our planet? Named after the Silurians, a fictional race from BBC's Doctor Who, the Silurian Hypothesis posits the question if it's possible to tell that there was an industrial civilization that predates humans. As far as mainstream science knows, humans are the only species in the world, perhaps even in the whole solar system, that reached an industrial level of civilization. There are no other advanced civilizations that we know of. But what if there was? This question gets more intriguing by putting things into perspective. Archaic humans have only been around for a few million years. Modern human species, aka Homo sapiens, 300,000 years. Meanwhile, civilization was said to have only existed for 6,000 years. If we shrink Earth's 4.6 billion years of history into a single day, our existence on this planet is nothing more than a few seconds. Our industrial revolution that began a couple hundred years ago, just a blip. So, the Silurian Hypothesis makes us wonder if other intelligent species have evolved even before us. If you think about it, over the course of 500 million years or so since the Cambrian explosion, there is more than enough time for another intelligent species to have evolved. While the dinosaurs, who were undoubtedly mightier and much larger species than us, are now extinct, they have ruled Earth for 165 million years. The dinosaurs. Despite their long tenure on Earth, however, they never evolved into a species that could have developed a civilization. Neither there were others. But then again, how sure are we if the civilization we're looking for have existed and disappeared that deep in time when geologic records don't go past the Quaternary period around 2.6 million years ago? In an article penned by Adam Frank himself, published in The Atlantic, he stated that very fact. For instance, the largest archaic surface can be found in the Negev Desert, which is only 1.8 million years old. Everything had been turned to dust. Like in our story during the intro earlier, when we imagined what Earth would look like without humans, there would almost be no visible trace left of our civilization, even our tallest and strongest structures, a million years later. That same scenario applies to any ancient civilization that existed millions of years ago. Earth's crust is remade again and again in a process called subduction, wherein oceanic and some continental lithosphere sinks into the mantle, giving birth to new surfaces including new lands and new continents. Any visible geologic evidence would be literally swallowed by Earth. But if we can't turn to geologic records, what about fossils? While fossils could have been our best evidence, unfortunately, only a tiny fraction would be fossilized one day. In fact, fossilization is so rare that every fossil we have collected over the years only accounts for a very small percentage of all animal species that have ever lived. How small? Let's say about less than 1/10 of 1%. So, was there no other way to know if another civilization had made it this far before us? The only way we know is by studying our own impact on Earth. Since the Industrial Revolution, humanity has impacted Earth more than any other species in the course of our planet's long history. Aliens and future intelligent life forms would probably know we existed by looking into our chemical footprint, such as our use of rare earth elements, how we redirected nitrogen to support our ever-increasing food supply, and our use of plastics. But probably the most telling evidence of our existence was our use of fossil fuels. As we know, fossil fuels were once living creatures, and burning them changes the ratio of carbon isotopes in the atmosphere, known as the Suez effect. Fossil fuel burning also increases temperature. If another advanced civilization in the far future were to study the Earth's sediment samples, they would probably find these unusual occurrences as evidence of our civilization. In the same manner, we could use it to detect an advanced civilization that predates us. But was there a similar occurrence far into the Earth's past? Turns out, there was. Called the Paleocene-Eocene Thermal Maximum, a short but prominent interval of abnormal temperature spikes happened on Earth some 55 million years ago. The global temperature was so high that it was hypothesized that even the Arctic had subtropic temperatures during this period. This event was often pointed out as something that is quite similar to the global warming we're experiencing today. So, is this finally the evidence we're looking for to prove that an advanced civilization existed before us? Maybe not. Not only did this happen within the span of 100,000 years or so, but natural events could have caused this phenomenon, such as an eruption of a massive volcano or a comet impact. Even Schmidt and Frank didn't believe that was the case. In fact, from the very beginning, they made it quite clear that they strongly doubt the existence of an advanced civilization before humans. So, why did they publish the paper in the first place? In one interview with the Washington Post, co-author Adam Frank stated that, "But the question of what one would look like if it did exist is important. How do you know there hasn't been one? The whole point of science is to ask a question and see where it leads. That's the essence of what makes science so exciting." Without evidence, it's simple to dismiss this as another theory and fun thought experiment to help you pass the time, or use it as a topic for an intellectual conversation with friends. But if you look at the question from another perspective or two, things would get weirder, or rather, more interesting. Because the problem is, when you think about it, the question of how advanced this civilization we're talking about might shift things a bit. You see, if this civilization ceased to disappear before it even reached a level similar to 18th century, if there was any chemical footprint, it would be much more difficult to find. What if this civilization only reached a level of advancement akin to the Middle Ages or even Renaissance? Conversely, What if that civilization reached the point where it was so far advanced that it stopped relying on fossil fuels and made a dedicated effort to reduce its carbon footprint? By now, we understand how important it is to use sustainable energy and live sustainably. What if that civilization had already achieved that? Or what if they didn't rely on fossil fuels at all? We could only make assumptions based on our current understanding of our civilization and its impact on the world. If this ancient race had a very different way of life than ours, then it would even be more difficult to ascertain whether they existed at all, given the knowledge and technological capabilities we have at the moment. Now, a more intriguing question pops up. If they had indeed existed long ago, what happened to them? Where are they now? The most straightforward answer is perhaps they have gone extinct. A cataclysmic event might have wiped them out in the face of the Earth, along with any evidence of their existence. But then, what if they survived? Where did they go? The series from where the hypothesis got its name may have an interesting explanation. The Silurians. In Doctor Who, the Silurians were a race of reptilian humanoids who lived on Earth millions of years before the humans, more or less around the time when dinosaurs also roamed the planet. However, they went underground and entered a hibernation state while expecting a cataclysmic event that threatened to wipe out all living forms, including the Silurians. In some stories, a group of Silurians also left the Earth via a starship. When that didn't happen, the Silurians didn't wake from their slumber for millions of years until humans came along and became the dominant force on Earth. Obviously, Frank and Schmidt took inspiration from these characters when they named their paper. Either way, the name was very fitting. If indeed there was an advanced race before us, it would be a reptilian race, since mammals only dominated the planet after dinosaurs were driven to extinction. If humans could evolve from hominins for only 6 million years and build a civilization in less than 10,000, then it's very possible for species who have been here longer than us to do that. Dinosauroids. Granted, Silurians were fictitious, but did you know that long before this hypothesis came into being, there was a different but not altogether dissimilar thought experiment that speculated dinosaurs may have actually evolved into an intelligent life form, like similar to humans? Known as Dinosauroid, this hypothetical species was posited by Canadian-American paleontologist Dale A. Russell. He theorized that if Stenonychosaurus didn't vanish when the dinosaurs were wiped out, they may have evolved into an intelligent and advanced species, similar to humans. Interestingly, the troodontids, which is the clade to which the Stenonychosaurus belonged, had semi-manipulative fingers, meaning they could somehow grasp and hold things, which would be, in time, important for harnessing tools and such. Moreover, Russell noted that there has been an increase in the brain weight relative to other species with similar body weight in dinosaurs over time. Could this be the ancient race we're looking for? We can't say for sure. After facing criticisms from other paleontologists, Russell said later on it was only a thought experiment, but it didn't stop others from musing and theorizing if it could actually be true. Now, if the Dinosauroids did indeed evolve from the Stenonychosaurus and survived, what happened to them after millions of years? If, like the Silurians, the Dinosauroids have faced cataclysm, they may have taken some preemptive measures to prevent their extinction. They may have fled to another planet or went underground. But what if they never left? Even crazier still, what if all this time the ancient race we're only speculating about were actually living alongside us without our knowledge? What if they were with us since the dawn of our own civilization? Reptilians among us. There may have been clues to their existence staring at our faces all along. Different cultures and civilizations across the world and throughout history have talked about reptilians. from Lamia of Greek mythology to Chak of the Mayan civilization. Hindu mythology even talks about a whole race of reptilian-like beings called the Nagas who, wait for it, live underground. Many deities, immortal beings, and legendary founding figures were said to possess reptilian-like qualities, such as the Chinese dragon kings, the Aztec god Tlaloc, and the mythical Athenian monarch Cecrops. What if they were actually from the ancient race of reptilian beings? Being intelligent and powerful as they were gods in the eyes of our ancestors. The Bible itself mentions reptilian creatures possessing human-like intelligence. This can be seen particularly in the serpent who tempted Eve. It was through his maneuvering that humans gained knowledge. Of course, we couldn't discount the many rumors of reptilian-like creatures that have popped up in places across the globe, such as the lizard man of Scape-Ore Swamp in South Carolina and the Thetis Lake Monster in Canada. Come the 19th century, more and more stories and theories have surfaced. Of course, this video wouldn't be complete without the mention of David Icke, whose writings about the lizard people planning a conspiracy against humanity helped make the concept of reptilians more widely known to the public. Until there is concrete evidence, the Silurian hypothesis stays as an intriguing theory and thought experiment. But whether there was any truth to this whole thing or none at all, the Silurian hypothesis helped us ponder important questions, including our own existence, history, and fate as a species. On the other hand, where to look for evidence? If there are any left? As if our last hope, it turns out to be the Dinosauroid, the reptilian races, the lizard people, and the like. Strangely enough, people often refer to some of their rulers as being born of dragons, dragon kings. If we take a larger view, actually reptilian-like creatures play important roles in almost all mythologies and religions. Continue your adventures by watching our playlists. And if you want more, just play the next episode that comes up as a suggestion on your left.